here. Going live, and it says you're live. That means that we are most likely live. Hello and welcome back. Now, we are sorting everything out because, as always, nothing works just like it wanted or like we wanted, and we are preparing for the next presentation during which we can sort everything out. Now, first, the question to the audience: do we need to notify you that the stream has started? If somebody could just wiggle a bit, send some emojis, let us know that you're there. Do something. I see a thumbs up. That is good thing. And yes, we are here. That means the stream to the audience picks up automatically when we start. Isn't it nice when a plan actually works? Now, to call everybody into order, let's call up our first speaker. And while he is already in the Jitsi, I would say if I look at the actual room plan, then he is not quite there. So Mariano, would you please step on stage and there we are, and then turn around to the audience so that you are properly facing everyone. That's good. That's the power position on stage. We like that. Okay. So with that, I would say without much further ado, we dive right in after your break. And Mariano's presentation is on something that is, I would say, wild topic that gets debated back and forth. And I will also have an opinion on some part of that, which is Tomcat's session replication. So Mariano is is going to talk about session replication with Redis, and missing the right window here. I'm missing my notes. I'm lacking them. But Redis in Liferay 7.4 for Tomcat session replication will cover everything else when after this. Mariano, sorry for that messed up introduction. Please take it away and let us know.
Okay, I'm going to start. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, done. So yes, I'm going to start. So as Olaf mentioned, this talk is about Tomcat session replication with Redis in 7.4. The title says session replication, but it's not a session replication per se, in the sense that data is not transferred across the nodes. It's more like a session sharing, in the sense that the data it's safe in a common place that is the Redis database. A couple of years ago, I made a similar blog post, but this one was for 7.2. And I think that this new post is good for a couple of things. The first one, it's because, I needed to update the code in order to make it work in 7.4. And the second one, it's because it can be a good introduction to understand things like the shielded container that are completely new in 7.4 and that have changed our class loader architecture. So first, I will start with Redis and Redison. Redis is an in-memory database that can be useful if you want to save your session information in a central and external place, so that if your nodes crash, at least the session information will be maintained alive and available, and you are not going to lose that session information. And Redison is an external library, It was not developed by Liferay, and it's useful for a couple of things. Um, the first one, it's because it provides the integration between Redis and Redison, and also because it's a very efficient library, because it not only it doesn't transfer the whole session information each time, but only the modified attributes. So in the end, what we are going to talk about is about this Tomcat session replication. We also will talk about the shielded container, and we'll talk about the serializer and the serializer classes in Liferay that provide the logic that is needed to serialize and deserialize each object. So let's start with a Redis default installation. It's very simple, as you can see. You just need either in the context XML or in the server XML, you just need to configure the Redis manager. This Redis manager, what we'll do, it will be in charge of handling the session creation, and it will orchestrate the different codecs that Redis use to serialize and deserialize the data. Also, you can indicate a configuration file. This is the Redis conf that I added here. You can use or choose whatever name you like, and you can configure many properties, but the ones that I choose for this proof of concept are the Redis server IP, because I installed it on my local machine. This is localhost, and this is the Redis server default port. But you have some other properties that you can learn about them in this link that I added here. It's the link to the Redis project, so you can gather more information about different properties. But for now, these are the default one, the server IP and the server port, the ones that I'm going to use. And after the configuration, what you have to do, it's just to deploy in the Tomcat lib the Redis all library and the Redis Tomcat 9 library. Redis has specific versions library for many Tomcat versions, for Tomcat 8, Tomcat 9, even for Tomcat 10. But because a normal 7.4 library bundle comes out with Tomcat 9, this is the library I used. So with this configuration, if you start a portal and with anything on it, a clean bundle, and you just try to log in with any user, you need to log in just to have some attribute set and attribute retrieval, so that data is saved and retrieved from Redis. You will get a class not found exception like this one. That means that the module com library product navigation blah 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 is not able to load the portal preferences IMPL class. Why does this happen? Because it happens because normally when we are dealing with attributes, either setting the attribute or retrieving the attribute, we use as the variable type the interface. So when we build our module, the module will know how to reach the interface class loader, but not the implementation class loader, as is happening with the portal preferences IMPL. But this can be achieved with Liferay code, and this is what my solution achieves. And I will talk about it later, how is it implemented. But first, a little background on Liferay 7.4. So as you can see in Liferay, this is a 7.3x, but same thing happens with 7.2 or whatever version of 7.3. We had on the Tomcat libx folder, we had some of the core jars like portal kernel, but this is no longer happening on Liferay 7.4. What we did to be even more OCI friendly is to have to create a shielded container lib folder. As you can see, this is not a common folder name. It's inside the Liferay web application, webinf, but it cannot be, or it's jars. You can see that we have here also portal kernel, portal IMPL. It's jars cannot be, or the class loaders that the jars represent cannot be accessed individually. What we do is to create a common class loader that will be accessible to your different modules. How do we do this? Okay, let's see. We have this shielded container servlet container initializer that mainly what it does, it builds a single class loader. This class loader lists all the jar files. The jar files, these ones, the ones that are listed here, the ones inside the shielded container lib. And with those URLs, the jars URLs, it builds a single class loader that is the shielded container class loader. As you can see, I have the code here. This shielded container keeps all the URLs, so when it needs to find the resources, it can search in each resource and find what it's looking for. Normally, when you are developing your modules, you will not have to take care about this because this shielded container class loader will be exposed through the default Liferay bundle, but you have to take a couple of things into consideration. The first one is that if you have more than one application deployed in your application server, in this case in your Tomcat server, you will need to share, because as you saw, this shielded container is not in the Tomcat class loader, so it's not shared across the different applications. So for example, here we have the MySQL jar, and if you want to use this driver jar, you will have to move it to the Tomcat lib in order to be shared among the different web applications in case you have not only Liferay in your application server. And the other important thing that you have to take care is that if you need to configure something in your Tomcat, like we did with the Redis manager, because the shielded container class loader is not visible from the Tomcat class loader, Liferay core classes will not be available. But this can be achieved. I'm going to show how I did this. So in the end, it was a two-way based approach. So we have Tomcat side classes. The Tomcat side classes are just a skeleton. They are just there to declare that there is a session manager, but the logic, it's going to be performed on the Liferay side classes, because it's Liferay the one that knows how to serialize and deserialize properly their classes. So I'm going to show you each class. This is the Liferay delegated Redis session manager. Okay, you can see it extends the Redis session manager, and mainly it's a composed class that receives an interface. The implementation of this interface is the one that is done on the Liferay side classes, and because this implementation it's needed to properly serialize and deserialize, we are going to wait until this interface is populated, and we are going to do this with a countdown latch. So we also, on the Tomcat side, we also have the Redis manager helper, that it's a pretty simple interface. It only has a couple of methods. The first one, it's the create empty session. I think that the name it defines what the method does or should do, because it's an interface. And also we have a get coded method that should return the needed codec. I'm going to talk about the codec because it's on Liferay side, and I'm going to open it right now. So what this codec does, it just adds to the class loader provided by Redis Liferay default class loader. This class loader or this method will return the shielded container class loader. Why are we doing this? It's because the Redis class loader, usually the one that is passed to this method is the current thread class loader, and sometimes the current thread class loader doesn't have enough information about the Liferay classes, so somehow we need to access Liferay core classes. For example, the class loader pool that I'm going to talk in a couple of minutes about it. And we do so, we aggregate both class loader, the get class loader and the class loader in this aggregate class loader class. This is a provided Liferay class that what does is it will search first in this class loader, and if it doesn't find the resource, it will later search as a fallback in this class loader. Also, we have the Redis shielded container initializer. It's a straightforward class. What does is just it sets the Redis session manager helper that was needed in the Tomcat side. This is the implementation, and it's set when we know that the shielded container class loader has been initialized. We know that because this is like a listener, so that when the shielded container is initialized, this method is called, and then we are now safe to populate the manager helper. And last, the manager helper that implements pretty much the logic of the serialization and the serialization process. This class is based on the portal session IMPL class that was available in 7.3, 7.2, and prior versions. Now it has been removed in 7.4. And what it does, it has three inner classes. I'm going to take a look to them. So we have the serializable Redis session. This one extends the Redis session class, the one that is provided by the Redis library. But what is different is that when we are dealing with attributes like getting or setting, we are going to wrap the object in a lazy serializable object wrapper, except for safe classes. What are safe classes? Classes that are bootstrap loaded, that each or every JVM know how to load. I mean classes like class or byte class or string class that don't need to be wrapped because it will affect the performance, and it's not needed because the JVM or each JVM knows how to load those classes. And what does the lazy serializable object wrapper do? What it does, it's going to use when it's writing here, when it needs to retrieve the data here, it's going to use the serializer class. This is a Liferay class that I'm going to explain, and has a lot of information about how to load a Liferay class. And also it uses the lazy serializable. This is also a wrapper. It's lazy because it only deserializes the data when it's needed. And this lazy serializable, what it does, it uses the serializer Liferay class. Why are these classes so important? Let's take a look to them. It's because when we need to serialize, we are not only saving the class name, but we are saving the context name. What is the context name? Well, this is the class loader pool. The class loader pool is a library provided class that has a couple of maps, but the one that is important for this use case is the one that has as keys the context name and as values the class loader. The context name is composed from the bundle symbolic name and the bundle version. That means that in any point of the code with that information, that context name, we can get the class loader information. So we are saving the name and the class loader that it's able to load that class, so that then when we need to deserialize, we can retrieve the context name here, and we can ask for the class loader needed to load that class. That's how we know that we can load each class that it's serialized and deserialized in Redis. So that's pretty much the implementation. I'm just going to tell you how to configure it. As you can see, it's quite straightforward. In the root XML of the Liferay web application, this is the context of the application. You just have to indicate that you have to use the Liferay delegated Redis session manager. We can use the same Redis conf with the server IP and the server port, and we have to deploy a couple of modules. This one, the Redis integration, is the one that contains the Liferay site classes. So it's deployed in the shielded container lib that it's a Liferay folder, and the Redis integration Tomcat that contains the Tomcat related classes that it's deployed in the Tomcat lib. If you need the source code of these modules, you can get it. I have left here the link to the GitHub that has all the source code, and you can deploy, modify, do whatever do you like with that source code. And at last, if you deploy it, you will see that by default, Redis traces a lot of information because the default log level is info. So if you start working with your Liferay portal, you will see that you get some messages like this one. You can easily change this going to your Tomcat login configuration and just change the org Redis on Tomcat level login to warning. So before ending, I would like to say that I did this on my free time. I'm not asking for your money, but it will be really nice if some of the money you save not having to do this development, you can give it to some non-governmental organizations, and that maybe could help to make the world a better place. So that's all, and thanks a lot, everyone, for your time.
Thank you, Mariano.
Thanks a lot.
And yeah, let me get sorted here. Number one, typically we ask speakers to prepare some of their material for consuming them after the presentation. Congratulations, you have already finished that task. So the blog article is already there with all of the details, so immediately ready to just be put into use. Now the next one, I don't know if you can hear my dog. He's just started coughing. Let's see what happens down there. Now the next thing that I found in here was there's a surprising amount of class loader magic here, and I'm wondering, as I often see some questions about, hey, how do I do some class loader magic? I want to bypass the OSGI part for one reason or another. Typically, I advise against it, but you seem to have solved it. Do you think this can be taken as a blueprint for well, how also to do class loading bypassing OSGI, or would you rather say, nah, that's not it?
I think it should not be a good idea. In fact, that's why we called it shielded container, to be somehow protected. But if you need to configure something on the Tomcat side, so that there needs to be some communication between the Tomcat class loader and Liferay class loaders,
Mhm.
that's the only way, or at least the only way I found to do it. So I will recommend against that, except for very exceptional cases.
Mhm. Okay, well, I want to say correct answer, because that class loader magic is actually is evil. So whenever that is required or that is asked for, it is typically not the very first thing that comes to my mind looking for any of that.
I agree. So if anyone has a similar thought, maybe the first option should be ask about it, because I agree that it's not the recommended options except for very exceptional cases.
Yep. And Dave sits in the corner on the couch. So, Dave, if you're there, you might as well agree, I guess. So, Dave, that's Dean Nebbing in the corner. So, yeah, he frequently gets the same question as well. Let's see, and share our world with the world with YouTube. But it doesn't look like Dave is currently there, even though he's on the couch. He might be petting the cat. I do not see any other question, but this gives me the opportunity to remind you of the place to ask your questions, which is on Liferay's community Slack. Find that on liferay.dev/chat. Or if you already have an account, then you know where to find it.
Where you can also find the thread related to the Mariano's talk, Mariano's talk, and I shared the link to the GitHub repository he shared with you during the talk, and also the blog post, so you can find all the material here.
Yes,
Thanks
that's
a lot.
good. Then let me double check. Life is hard with too many screens and tabs. I don't know what's harder, more screens or more tabs.
More tabs. Because when you have more tabs are shorter, and sometimes you close them accidentally because you have too many tabs. And also
Exactly. But I am done and sorted. Mariano, thank you very much for being available. Please stay around, and if somebody has some extra questions, please stalk Mariano and find him, I would say outdoors, maybe right in front of the door. If you can just hang around there for a bit, then people might just join you and ask you some additional questions. Yeah, so can you do
Of
that?
course.
Perfect.
Of course, if not, they can write me personally to my library email. So yeah, I don't have any problem answering any question.
Okay, I would say just for now, just stand for a minute in front of the door and see if somebody follows you, and then maybe you can talk. Otherwise, well, thank you very much for this presentation and for having the blog post ready already.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye.
Goodbye. And we don't need to ask our next speaker on stage because he is already on stage, but he promised to change sides. So let's do
switch.
that right now. So you wanted to switch the sides, and let's do that physically. Oh, you're going to sit down. That's also a good thing.
And just see the audience here. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Facing the audience, that's very welcome. Louis, what should I say about you? There's not much that I can say about you other than everybody probably already knows you. This year we haven't seen you too much, and maybe you reveal why, maybe you don't. I bet it's because you didn't shave.
Yeah.
So
Just I'm mostly walking from home, getting from human form to bear form, and no many lights here, so that's just not welcoming for the camera. So I'd rather have my little avatar here, which is not available as an avatar in Walk Adventure. So it's kind of hey, you might think that's there's Ray, Kenny versions of Ray, but that was just that was just a try.
okay. Well, Louis, you will let us know about your research, your practice in bringing service builder objects to or service builder entities to the objects world.
Yep.
And with that, I would say take it away. Welcome, Louis.
Thank you, Olaf. Sharing the screen and getting ready with some slides to start. The idea of this talk is it's pretty straightforward from the title. It's from service builder to objects. The idea is to explore an example and get some thoughts out there to to give you some insights on the strategy you could adopt, right, when it's come to moving your service builder entities to objects. So service builder, we might all know service builder, but just to sum up in a few sentences, it's used to build custom entities for custom applications. You have Liferay with web contents, documents, and maybe you need a task management application, and there's no task management. So you need that entity out there in Liferay. So you would build one custom entity, for example, or multiple ones with relationships. And basically, Service Builder will generate boilerplate code for the persistent layer, mostly, I would say. Of course, you have the service layer, but you have a bunch of implementation detail to take care of. So it's helping you to a certain extent. That's why I'm just saying persistent layer here. And also it helps you integrate with Life frameworks, for example, assets for your custom entity to be in search results, for example, when you type a keyword in the search bar, or with workflows if you need your entity to be triggered through workflows where you need to validate first that, for example, the task is the right task, the due date is correct, and then we can accept that as a task in your to-do lists. And for objects, we talked about objects, and it's used to build also custom entities, but without any code, contrary to Service Builder, which generates some modules and you need to deploy to Liferay. And it generates tables, same as Service Builders, but it generates also, I should correct, for RESTful APIs, because it's then listed in our headless APIs with the Swagger documentation, and it can also generate web applications. So it's not on the persistent layer anymore. It's very the whole story where you can describe your objects, your entity, and have an application running, and you can deploy in any page. And integrates with Liferay frameworks also. So it's searchable. You can integrate with workflows out of the box, and there's no thing you need to add with some code. And when we talk about moving from Service Builder to objects, what comes in mind is upgrades and refactoring, in the sense of you at some point you have to upgrade Liferay, either because for security reasons, or we're dropping support for a specific version. But in that upgrade plan you have, refactoring is rarely, if never, part of the plan. And that's a bit of a shame, because you want to use a new stuff, but the upgrade plan for the project you're in needs to be as short as possible, and as cheap as possible, which is related. So you take advantage of backward compatibility. For example, moving from 6.2 to 7.0 or 7.1, 7.2, maybe you have like huge Spring applications packaged in huge WAR files, and you'd like to take advantage of the new OSG architecture and split that in modules, and so you have dependencies, better dependency management in the runtime. But it's not part of the plan. You need to take those features and move them to the new version, and it needs to work as it is and as it was, and there's nothing evolving on that. And then once you did the upgrade, they would ask for new stories to be developed, and you're still building up on that ancient architecture. But the more you wait, the more difficult it is to refactor all of this. I'm sure you're aware of that, and I think that's the frustrating part is that ideally you should have some time given for you for fixing and refactoring. The reality, I believe, is you are given time for fixing things because it's understandable for a project manager or whatever the title is to give you some time to fix the story you build the week or 2 weeks before, because it's like you didn't finish the story in somehow. So they don't give you time to fix, really. It's just to finish your work. They understand this that way. But refactoring, it's not that concrete for them. It's like, yeah, you're doing things in the background. I don't see really the difference, even if you do things that produce better performances, like you're winning some milliseconds, but sometimes it's not even it's not enough concrete for product manager to give you that time for that. So if you not have time for refactoring, you cannot move forward with the new features, all of that. And that's not specific to Liferay. It's really with any technology you would use. It's like using Spring, Quarkus, whatever. There's new versions also, and there's new things you can rely on, and there's things that the framework is solving, so you need to update the framework, but you need time for that. And for Liferay, the question we get with new features, again, it's not specific for Liferay, but this is for Liferay that I'm working, is like, are objects production ready? And that's like the question we always have with a new feature. And it's a legitimate question, obviously, but it's very difficult to get our head around that. And I tried to put some bullet points for that. So that could mean, like, is it used in production? And that answer is yes. And Olaf mentioned that we are using objects for the registration for Dev.24, and we are also using objects with some customers already. So it's used in production. So does that mean it's production ready? Maybe the question would be like, is it battle tested? And that, I believe, should be open to debate, because battle tested is which scale are we talking about? So we could say yes on our end. You could say no, like it's not even enough projects to say it's battle tested. It's not long enough of a deployment to say it's battle tested. It's already open to debate. And the question would be also, is it still in development? And the answer is yes. So you might say, okay, it's still in development. We also mentioned maybe heavy development, because we are adding a lot of things in objects. We are moving very fast. This year is like one release per week. So that can be scary if you hear that it's still in development and you say like, okay, it's not, maybe it's not stable, but it might just need, more features, new things. It doesn't mean that what has been developed yet is not stable. It's just that maybe we're missing some parts that could complete a certain story. And every project has its own story. So really the question could be the other way around. Is your production ready for objects? And when I say objects, I mean you need to snapshot objects when you are asking that question. Like, I'm deploying the latest Liferay, like the update 52. I'm trying out objects and see how it can fit the current use cases. And I'm asking the question, is it ready? Is my production and what I'm doing with my production ready for the state of the object as it is today? So the answer could really depends on the project. So it might be ready for some project, not for others, or maybe there's a part of the project that could be ready for that. Either, something you did with Service Builder, or maybe a new thing that may be the easiest part. You have a new use case, you try object with that. But here we're going to focus on moving from Service Builder and things that could fit objects. So let's jump in to the demo. Let's describe the demo first, and to let you see what we're demoing. It's a very simple use case where I'm taking a use case you might have seen mentioned yesterday from my colleague Fabian, which is an after-sales request. So here I just did a title, description, and a link to a commerce order, because we are in the scenario where we imagine using Liferay Commerce, and we do an after-sales request given an order. So we can have many requests for one order. So it's a many to one in that case. And you have the source here. I will link after that talk in Slack. So sorry about that. Let's check that. So I just run Liferay, and I'm showing you that. Let me put in presentation mode. Should be a bit better. And the important parts are API, service, and web, really. API and service are what are generated with Service Builder. And if you look at the service XML, it's very standard. We have the audit fields. We have, the columns for the status that are needed if we want to integrate with workflow. We have, what I described, like I need a title, I need a description, and the relationship field, which is, the primary key to the commerce order. And then some ordering, some finding, and then some references that are needed if I need to, integrate with the asset framework, if I need to integrate with the workflow framework. So there's a bunch of things you need to do when you consider to integrate with those frameworks in Liferay. And then in the implementation, just to give a quick overview of the work that is needed, a glance of the work that would be needed going that road. I have a method with after sales requests that trigger a reindex for that entity. And I'm creating a new model and populating it with the status, all of that. Adding to resources for assets, updating the assets, and start the workflow instance. So, I'm triggering the workflow. I can integrate with the workflow. And all of that is, code I need to write that is not generated by the Service Builder. So it's a lot of code. You probably wrote a bunch of them, and it's still a lot of code to write in order to integrate with all the pieces that in the end objects are integrated out of the box. So that's very interesting to say, I'm checking out that entity and I want to move forward and do an object. And for the web port, it's very simple. Portlets, if you look at the GSP, we just have a simple form with a select that would, describe, list just the commerce order that I created and the title description needed for the request. So from that, let's go to find, here. Let's log in. And let's create, let me zoom a bit. And let's create a new site. And we'll use Minium, which has its own site initializer. Again, we had to talk about them earlier with Chema. And it will create a bunch of products. It will create pages and configure widgets. So we have the site ready to use with commerce that we can use right away. Here I want to test if my after sales request is functioning. So I don't want to go through creating a new site, adding a new page, adding a product, binding to a channel. It does all of that automatically thanks to site initializers. Taking a bit of time. There's a lot to create. I'm going here. What I need to do, I think, to add to the cart, I need to create a new account. So just open a new tab. I create an account. If it lets me to. Yes, Liferay. Save. And if I refresh, I should have the account selected by default. Yes. And just making an order. So I have something, here. Let's say Liferay somewhere to Diamond Bar, California. Yeah, don't remember the code. Let's continue to the checkout and just, we don't have any payment method here. So just putting that order and spending. Okay, and we can add our, is it deployed? Maybe not. Let's deploy. Let's start. Reload. Let's put that here, and we'll see a very simple form. Okay, but I can select an order. I can put like late order. What is happening is right, send help. Like I'm desperate. Okay. And I don't have a list where I'm just building this very quickly. The idea is, now we have something that we need to move. So first we need to define our new object. And I already did that and created a JSON file. So here it is, after sales request, that the name of the object of, not the label of the object, the name of the object, so it doesn't take space, the name, the label. And that's the draft. So I can see the fields. So the default one, the system one, and then the title and description. So I'm happy with that. I will just publish. I see that I have a title here. It's in content and data. It's the scope is the site, just like the service builder I have. So that's good. What's missing might be the relationship. So I can create I will put commerce order. I'll show you why it's commerce order to after sales requests. And it's one to many. So I can, for one order, have many requests. And I'm selecting my custom objects. Okay, that's good. And I should, I could go back to the site and check out content and data. And I see after sales requests. And I can add new one. That's great. But what I need, and that's the very goal of that talk, is to move the data from Service Builder to that. So we could, and we had a talk, that was the first talk of the F24, use the import-export center, which is behind a feature flag. So if I go back to, I show you the portal text, there's a feature flag for that. I need to put to true because it's, under development. So we might want to use that, maybe at least try it out. And if I list here, I cannot find after sales request. Oh, yes, I can find after sales request. Sorry. I didn't find it earlier. I was not properly checking that out, but I could save that and export as JSON and then import that and map it to the object. So that would be the new easy way. But obviously for my talk, I didn't prepare that, and I was looking for other, ways to operate that. So I have another module, that I created, which is a command. And in that command, it's very specific to after sales requests, where it's a transfer command. The scope is dev.24 just because I did it for the event. It should be like after sales request just to make sure what we're talking about. And taking as parameters an object definition ID, so I know what is the definition ID of the sales request as an object, and then the relationship, because I know that for my object I have a relationship with commerce order, and you see there's a pattern here, like you have R underscore relationship name and then underscore commerce order ID, and this is what we've seen. We know when we did that. Oh, sorry, the C after sales request might be the object, because the namespace of my service builder entity is dev24. So yeah, that was the question I asked to Igor, is how could I see my entity here? And the answer is you need to implement a batch task item thing, so a new class to integrate with the batch engine, and so it's listed here. But if we see the relationship here, it's interesting because It's the name of the relationship we give when creating the relationship on the commerce order. So it's r_, the name, underscore the primary key of that relationship. So we use that as the parameter. And the interesting part is that you can use, if you want, the local service for objects. And adding an object, you put the value basically of your entity into a map. So the title is the description, and then the relationship as described. And other thing that is interesting is that you can reuse from the original entity some of the values, like the user ID. You want to keep track of the author, what was the create date, modified date, and obviously the group ID, because I don't want that sales request to be created in another site, the wrong site, or things like that. So we can keep track of the history, put things in the right place. And with that command, what I need is, let's go to the Google shell here. And we need the object, the object ID and the name of the relationship. So here, dev24 transfer, I'm taking the ID, and I need the relationship name. And hopefully it works. So I don't print out any results, which I should. But if I go back to Minium, hopefully demo gods are on my side. Okay, and I see a new, a new entry for my object with the right author, the commerce ID, the title, the description. So I moved that in a way that is kind of, I'm trying things out. I need something in between. I need a command to transfer. That could be a command. That could be something else you will deploy. But essentially, what's interesting for you guys, I think, is, in the reality of moving things, piece by piece, you can still use the local services in the back office, in the back end of Liferay, and leverage that, for your service builder. So that's the example I have. And with that, I would want to close with some thoughts about that, which is, adopting a strategy. Because you need, maybe it's obvious for you, but you need to try objects outside of the project somehow. As I said earlier, is your production ready for objects? And the snapshots objects at a given time. So at a given time, you try objects as it is, and you try different scenarios. Maybe you need more actions afterwards. You need to try out validation. There's a lot of features I didn't present, I didn't use. I have a very simple entity, but that's also something to consider. Start small and with the simplest entity ever you have in the project. That may be multiple entities, but try to take the simplest. Maybe there's a relationship, maybe there's not. You've seen that I use the relationship with a system object, and that's not really an issue, but try with the simplest one. And from what I did with my code, and I didn't use the import export thing, I really wrote some code to bridge between service builder and objects. And that's something you could think about, because when we're talking about objects, we're also mentioning remote apps. Like, if you're not happy with the automatically generated web view and layout you can build with objects, you could have your own remote apps. But when you think about service builder and maybe some web view with GSP, GSF, it could be with Thinlith and Spring, it's very difficult to consider that if you want to move an entity, you need to rewrite an entire front end. It doesn't, it doesn't match with this idea of getting small piece by piece and be iterative in that process of adopting the new feature of Liferay, and be mindful of the time you spend in a sprint to do some refactoring. So from the code I showed you just right now with the command, the OSGI command, you could imagine replacing, if I go back to here, this code could appear in the service implementation. Let me go back to here. Here you could say like, yeah, I won't use, that code, and I would call object local service, because there's a definition of sales request, but the service layer is used by that view that I won't move. So that could be an idea of how I could move, piece by piece from service builder to objects. So you can keep, as I said, your web module as it is, whatever the technology you used, and think later about, how could I use the REST APIs I have now with objects that I might not have with my service builder. I might not have a REST builder attached to it. And then, of course, prepare a rollback plan, because, remember Murphy's Law, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So when I, wrote a piece of code that simply move service builder entities, entries to object entries, I should think about the code that does the other way around, thinking about the new entry that I might have, the new ones, because I deployed to production, but there's an issue. I need to go back to service builder, but there's new entries in the object. So I need to be able to go back to service builder and do the code that would, simply take object entries and move that back to, the original table for service builder. So that's about it, guys. I hope that I give you some some insights, something to think about when moving to that new era that is developed by Liferay, which is objects, and how you could realistically adapt that new feature within your project and within your timeline.
Nice. We spoke, hold on a second. We spoke about this earlier, and indeed, you delivered on expectations as well as what you promised. For those of you who have been around at previous Dev.24s, Louis is always good to dive deep into code and make it practical and understandable. I very much appreciate that.
Thank you, Olaf.
And especially the very timely addition, basically after yesterday's opening presentation by Igor and Sergio, that you had to bring that into your presentation as well. So it was good seeing that Dev.24 made a difference. So if no other difference, it made this difference. But I hope there's more. It made some more difference for me. I like to say that I like trivial knowledge to be presented, and trivial knowledge is something that used to be trivial for the presenter, but is not even knowledge for somebody in the audience. So for Igor and Sergio, that was trivial knowledge, but nobody else knew it. And apparently, as soon as that's knowledge, it immediately turns into, well, maybe not trivial, but very close to trivial, so that the next day you'll present something that just embraces that presentation. So that's my favorite way of influencing the world, by presenting something that immediately turns into trivial knowledge for various values of trivial. How trivial was that?
Not trivial.
Well, that's why I said for various levels of trivial. But where on the scale was it? Like from very trivial to not at all?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Not very sure how trivial that was, because we know each other, so we get used to talk about it. So maybe it's more trivial now than it used to be.
Well, at least that.
Yeah.
So and it doesn't need to be universally trivial. It just needs to make a difference for 1, 2, 5, 20 people in the audience, and that's it.
Exactly.
Okay, I was just looking for questions from the audience, and then I see that you are posting in the thread on community Slack. So that is the GitHub repo that everything is in. That means if anybody wants to immediately check what Louis has been presenting and immediately try that out yourself, you can find the GitHub link right now in the community Slack. That's the event dev.24 channel.
Yeah, and if you have any questions after the talk, just write it down and I try to answer the best I can.
Yeah. Or maybe you want to go to Paris. So
yeah, I could.
We have the Paris Pavilion. So if anybody wants to go dive deep, maybe just meet outside, and if enough people flock around, more than 4, for example, then you can always decide where to go to, and you may want to go to Paris, or you may just want to be in front of the door of Budapest.
Yeah, I'll be around for sure.
Okay, perfect. So everybody knows you need to follow LGD, that is Louis Guillaume Durand. Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you, Olaf.
You have had the duty of presenting or of announcing Petteri and Tibor, and they are the next on our list. And Petteri is coming and found the stage, and Tibor is also very orderly around the rows here. So there we are. Petteri, you can still turn around so that everybody can see you, or that you see everyone. That is your avatar.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Yep. Hello again.
Yeah, there we are. So now that's the position on stage that's looking at the audience. Welcome back, I'll have to say. Is this your third or the fourth time that we see you, Tibor? Fourth. So that's the fourth and last time for Dev.24. So this is that is some engagement. And Petteri, it's the third, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is basically. Do we need to introduce you again? We were looking for you. We didn't even need to search for you because you came just by summoning you, and that summarizes your presentation topic, or at least the very, very, very basic topic that is search. Whenever Tibor and Petteri are on stage, we're talking about search, something with search. And this time it is semantic search, the semantic search capabilities. And I'm wondering about the half-life face huggers and what they have to do with the Hugging Face Inference API. It's got to do something with semantic search. Louis, do you want to add anything, or do you want to clarify or mysterify anything?
No, I'm just waiting for the presentation.
Then, without much further ado, Petteri, Tibor, take it away.
Thank you. Hey, everyone again. Just still do a little introduction. I'm Tibor. I'm the product manager of search here at Liferay, and my co-host on this session will be Petteri. He's a senior engineer and consultant in the search team and the creator of the foundations, what you're about to see for semantic search. So I will talk only a little, and then I will take a step back and let Petteri handle and cover the juicy stuff about semantic search on the session. And starting with few points. In the previous sessions, if you were watching or participating, we were introducing or talking about features already available in the product, features we have released even earlier this year. This one, semantic search platform capabilities, is something that completely is new, something which we have just completed the first epic, the first iteration of the development, something which is behind a feature flag. So it's in the product, but it has to be enabled because we are still doing some polishing before it can be enabled, I mean, as a feature enabled by default. And if we will have some time at the end of the session, I can comment on one thing that made us slowing down when it comes to removing the feature flag, which was about, for example, Hugging Face. And the point is that is there, and we are also going to publish the initial documentation soon. So this session is meant to help start building interest and getting feedback from community, from anyone who is watching this, because that's something that's, as I mentioned, completely new in Liferay DXP and Liferay Enterprise Search domain. Let me share my screen, and it should work, and just give me a little confirmation that it's working.
It's on.
Okay, so in a nutshell, what you are about to see is something building on top of we already have, like search blueprints, deriving a search query, search bar suggestions, and the configuration options you can have to, for example, control what kind of results you want to see suggested when the user starts typing into search bar. But semantic search will go beyond the traditional keyword-based search. And I'm saying traditional because, well, at least on one side, that's what the industry is also using to describe or differentiate between the normal or regular search. So basically, it's lexically searching in the corpus in your documents, and then semantic search is trying to capture the meaning of the content and also to capture the meaning of the search keywords the user is entering, and using vector representation, vector search, as you will see, it tries to provide more relevant results. And it's generally speaking, the longer the search keywords you're using, when it comes to semantic search, you're more likely to get better results if anything, everything else in the underlying model, machine learning model, and the configuration is right. So that's the introduction. And as I mentioned, this is behind a feature flag. And then hopefully we can make it, or we can remove the feature flag pretty soon. And then I'm handing it over to Petteri for the rest of the session.
Thank you. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Just a moment. Okay. So I will give here an introduction how to set up and use semantic search in Liferay. Before going there, I'm going to talk a little about semantic search in general. Tibor already covered some of the aspects there, but I think like the knowledge of implementation and how it works, it really helps in understanding the limitations and possibilities as well of semantic search here. And for starters, I share my apologies. I'm not using the self-service portal use case here as my demo environment. But I hope that by the end of the presentation, you will see that the approach I'm using here, it's really transferable to any other domain there. And I'll promise to write a blog post about that very specific scenario. So what is semantic search? For sure, that's something that I believe most of us use daily with Google or Bing. if I was to summarize the essence of semantic search into keywords, or 3 exactly, I would start with semantics. Surprisingly, semantics is the study of reference, meaning, or truth by Wikipedia. And coming from there, semantic search aims to understand the references, meaning, and context of your search phrase. On the other hand, semantic search is an application or product of natural language processing research. And semantic search aims to understand search phrases given in natural language, so that you are not forced to think like a machine and try to find the exact keywords, keyword matches. Semantic search, as Tibor said already, does not rely on keyword matches anymore. So if we compare the traditional keyword match-based search to semantic search through this search phrase here, traditional search would only be interested in 2 words here, buy and nuts, and would simply return results having hits on these words. But with semantic search, it would be different. Semantic search, properly set up, it could understand what this is about. This is really about location, where. It would also, or could understand like what's the action here. So it's buying, it's about shop or shopping, and it could also understand what I'm referring to with nuts. So is it about edibles or this steely counterpart of both? But how does it work behind the scenes? So in the heart of semantic search is so-called embedding. This peculiar word abstracted is actually merely a vector representation of some source data. This source data can be a word or a sentence, longer text, an image, or something else. In this context here in Liferay, we use text as source data, and we are talking about text embeddings. So this text embedding, this vector, it tries to capture the semantic information about the text. And as you can see here, it's not about keywords in this representation anymore. It's about numbers, these floating-point numbers. And more dimensions this vector has, more expression power, etc. it has. That is, however, not to mean that more dimensions better the quality of embedding really is. That's because of this here. So how do we get the embedding from this text? We need a transformer there in between, and we are using here in Liferay the sentence transformer framework for that. And the sentence transformer uses a model there. A model can be pre-trained, it can be fine-tuned with your own data, like fine-tuned pre-trained model, or even self-trained from scratch. But what this really is about and why we have this feature in Liferay now, it's about pre-trained, high-quality BERT models becoming available since like 5 years or so. So these models can be can have been trained with millions or even billions of sentences, like a huge computational task. So the choice of model really matters. It matters the most, almost here. So if you think about this use case, if model A was trained with the vocabulary of construction work or something, and model B would be food vocabulary, obviously the embedding, the vector created from this phrase would be different. So from here, it's easy to understand that in semantic search, it's really important that the data domain the model has been trained with is matching your data domain. So that's for the theory here, and how does this everything lands in Liferay search ecosystem. Thinking about indexing in Liferay, if you have an indexable asset, when you save it, an index document is created, and that's stored in search index. At search time, search query is sent to search index that returns an index document that's transformed to an asset and given back to the user. So now with semantic search, these pictures change a bit. So when semantic search is enabled at indexation time, when creating the index document, we call the transformer service. We send there a text representing the asset there, so like title and content, and we get an embedding this vector back. And that's added to the index document, and from there it goes on as usual. And at search time, we call the transformer service again. And this time, we send the keywords there and get embedding for these keywords back. And now, in the search engine, it's all about finding similar embeddings to your keyword embedding. So in a nutshell, semantic search works by comparing these text embeddings. Okay, and now to the demo. In this demo, there will be 3 core components. First of all, the transformer service, obviously. Then we need a search blueprint to initiate the semantic search, and then we apply this search blueprint to a search page. So here are the steps I'm going through here, or outline of the steps. So not sure if Tibor mentioned, but you need DXP 7.4 upgrade for the 7, I believe, at minimum for this feature to work. And as said, you need the feature flag enabled in portal ext properties. And one other thing to mention here, if you have existing data in your system, if you enable semantic search, you have to re-index at the moment. So let's go and start with setting up the portal here. So in portal ext properties, you set the feature flag like this, and I forgot to mention here that all these files on the portal ext properties, I'm sharing it in my GitHub repo. So I will show the link in the end of the presentation. So with this feature flag, portal is ready to go, and we can set up the transformer service. So currently we support 2 transformer services. The first one is Hugging Face Inference API. This service particularly is just for testing only. It has limitations why it cannot really be used in production. Later, maybe even this year, we will release support for Hugging Face Inference endpoints, which is an enterprise-grade solution for creating embeddings. The other option we currently have is txtai, and I'm using that one in my demo here. So just Googling txtai and going to their documentation, you will find these instructions here, how to set up the Docker container for the service. So it's a matter of getting the Docker file and creating either a CPU or GPU build, depending on your hardware. GPU is much faster if available. And then just creating a configuration and where you define the model to be used, and then just running the container. So my configuration here looks like this. I'm not using the default model for this demonstration, but the MS Marco Distilbert base. And when I have the config in place, I will just start the container. And now it's up and running. We can go and configure the portal. Let's sign in first. So the semantic search configuration can be found in system settings under search experiences. So here are 3 sections of settings. Let's walk through all of these. First of all, you need to enable sentence transformer for these embeddings to be created. You can select here the sentence transformer, address, username, password if using basic auth. And one thing to note here is embedding vector dimensions. So models can produce embeddings of different dimensionality. Often they are one of these 3 ones which we are now offering as options right now. So we can test the configuration here. If everything is correct, you get this green sign here. But for example, if the dimensionality would be wrong, you would get a warning like this. Indexation settings, the 2 first ones are of particular interest here, and maybe the most complicated ones. The 2 settings here say that when creating an embedding, use the 1000 first characters of my text to create the embedding. So why this kind of limitation? The limitation comes from the sentence transformer models. Usually, not always, they have a limitation of being able to get only 512 text tokens at time for processing. So this character count here, it's like an estimate how many characters will produce these 512 tokens. The setting here doesn't really matter that much when using the txtai, because if more than 512 tokens are created in that service, it just skips the rest of it and like falls back slightly. But with Inference API, if your text produces more than 512 tokens, creating embedding will fail. But as said, the Inference API is really for testing anyway, so I would encourage to use either txtai or then Hugging Face inference endpoints when they become available. The second setting is that if your text is longer than 1000 characters, in this case, where from the text the sample is taken from beginning or from middle or end. Usually I would say that the beginning is the best option here, but it really depends on the structure of your contents. The last 2 settings for which asset types we create the embedding and the language IDs. So the models are usually designed for a single language only, and it makes no sense to try to create embeddings for let's say web content translations. But there are also multilingual models. So whenever choosing a model, check the documentation, what it supports. The last one is a search time setting. When we enter the search phrases and create the embeddings, we cache them so that embeddings for the same search phrases would not be created over and over again. The service would not be called over and over again. Okay, so these settings are fine here, and we can go to the real deal here. And let's go to the blueprints. So in case you were not able to follow the previous presentation about search experiences or are not aware of what this feature is, a search blueprint is, put in short, a kind of search configuration template. With that, you can define exactly, for example, how search query is being built. And this template configuration you can then apply to any search page or even call from your own application. So let's create a blueprint demo. And this blueprint by default, it just replicates the standard Liferay search behavior. Let's take a look at our source data and how a standard search works for our test data. So the test data here, yeah, so it's not about self-service portals, but I've imported 400 articles about ethics. So why ethics? Because I think that this is a really good test bed for the purpose here. Ethics, if anything, requires understanding the references and meanings or philosophy in general. And also, it's important to be able to keep search phrases, to enter search phrases in natural language. But I also have in my system about 20,000 tech articles from Liferay Learn and Liferay Help Center, as well as something from Wikipedia. So let's see how semantic search manages to distill the ethical information from our index. One thing before doing the test search I wanted to show you is how the index documents look like when we have the embedding there. So this here I'm calling the Elasticsearch directly. This document here is the ethics document, and that's indexed with semantic search also. You can see the embedding like this in the document. Okay, so we were in the blueprint, and let's test the standard search, and let's pose a question about ethics. Is it right to steal? Okay, and let's take a look at these standard search results. Animal rights, human rights, supporting right to left languages and plugins. So you can see that excluding this one, maybe it's not really too relevant to the question here. Is it right to steal? And also, there are almost 3,000 results, and I have only around 400 articles about ethics here. So, what's happening here? The search is just trying to match right or steal in the documents here. So let's see if we can enhance it with semantic search. And I'm going to add here a risk scorer element. So what this blueprint does now, it uses the standard Liferay search to get results and then risk scores the results by embedding. So this is a kind of hybrid approach here. We are using a keyword match based search as a basis and then do a risk scoring with the means of semantic search. So let's refresh the preview, hoping to get some good hits now. And yes, so the first one is what I would expect to be the first article to answer this question. And you can see there are many like integrity great articles already among the first 10. But we have still almost 3,000 results, and maybe we would like to distill this even more. So let's try the raw semantic search approach now. So no hybrid, but pure semantic search. And for this to work, we have to disable Liferay search framework generated clauses from our search query. So for the purpose of the demo here, I'm disabling indexer clauses and also all the contributors. So now the search framework doesn't generate any clauses to our final search query. And if using this approach, please take a look at this warning here. So you have to take care of like securing that any unwanted issues won't appear. Then I'll add search by sentence embedding element. So this element here is not coming out of the box right now, but I'm sharing that in my GitHub repo. So you will be able to get it there after the presentation. So now let's see if we can improve the results. And now you can see we only have 6 results: ethics, fraud, tax evasion, divine command theory, maybe crime. These seem to be highly relevant to my question, all of these. I'm getting only 6 results because I'm setting here a threshold. So if I would put here something like 2.3, I would probably get some more. But would they be relevant anymore? Maybe not. There is some unwanted results already there. But finding this threshold is really data dependent. Okay, so this blueprint is now fine. I will save it. And the next step would be to go to configure our search page. Okay, so let's repeat our question here. We get the standard results. So now let's make this search page blueprint driven. For that, we need to add blueprint options widget. Then let's go and select the blueprint to be used on this page. Dev.24 demo. Save and let's update. And now we have seven results there. Okay, and we could also apply this blueprint to a search bar, suggestions if we wanted. So as I hope some of you saw in the presentation yesterday. So now also our suggestions would be using semantic search. Okay, so that's it for the demo, like a throw into this feature here. Some closing thoughts to this. So if you consider using this feature, maybe some questions should be asked here. So is your data domain or use case, are the users there searching for concepts rather than exact keywords? So for example, if that's a medical domain, probably the users would be more interested in exact matches than searching for concepts. Of course, if you have this kind of domain where exact matches really matter, you can still use the hybrid approach. Just emphasize keyword matches more than semantic search. Blueprint allows adjusting this balance there, so it's really convenient in tuning there. The second important question there is, and I hope it became clear already, that how well this performs it's really about the model here. So is there a pre-trained model for your domain and language available? If not, there might still be a good base model, and you could fine-tune it with your own data. So fine-tuning is pretty much taking a pre-trained model and like further training it with your own data, doing a domain transfer from its original domain. And one last consideration is that if the data in your system is diverse, it might be that you have a model specific to certain domain, then it would perform poorly on some other. So these are the kind of considerations you have to make. But I think that I encourage everybody to try this out and share feedback. We would be really grateful of that. We will be definitely developing this further in coming months and coming year. So that's it. Thank you. And here you can find the address to my GitHub repo. There you can find the portal txt properties as well as the embedding element and the blueprint I was using. So yeah, would there be any questions?
Thank you, both of you. Oh, hold on.
Maybe before some questions, I just wanted to close with a few notes on what's coming and what's planned to come on semantic search. So as Petri also mentioned, and you could see on the screen sharing, right now it is covering certain asset types, like web content article, message boards, knowledge base. And there are types we are planning on to add support for example, commerce products, custom objects, and web content articles with custom structures, which probably will further increase the readiness for current projects. Because, for example, if you have custom structures with fields, you probably would like to have the ability to decide, okay, which fields should participate in the text embedding input. And that's something we have to figure out. But for basic web content articles, it should be already working. The second thing is we also have plans, as Petri mentioned, to add support for Hugging Face's inference endpoints, which has recently got revamped. So the initial implementation, when it was done 2 months ago or 3, Hugging Face revamped their offering and pricing and the available services. And now the production grade enterprise ready service, transformer service as a service, is inference endpoints. And this is why we also have to do more iterations to add support for that. But in the meantime, txtai and is also available. And when it comes to Liferay Experience Cloud, we already had the chance to deploy it as a custom service on demand and used in the deployment running on Liferay Experience Cloud. And also when we introduce Hugging Face inference endpoints, this should be even an additional option besides deploying this custom service. And further in the future, hopefully we can also start using Elasticsearch as the transformer, because in Elasticsearch 8, it comes with a lot of machine learning things we could use. So in the future, when we will have Elasticsearch 8 connection support, it will open the possibility to add another service, transformer service, which is Elasticsearch 8, and use its approximate nearest neighbors APIs, for example, on the search time. So this is also on the roadmap. You can find the link to the related epic and the planned ones on the agenda, and also on the Slack channel, on the community forum. So community Slack, hopefully those can get you started.
Thank you. Testing. Yes, I am live. I'm unmuted. Great. That was a nice continuation, like coming back to blueprints and what they then can be used to. And it answers one question that I had for years, which is whenever a customer asked, hey, we want our search to behave just like, let's say, pick a low-hanging fruit, Google. I was like, it knows a lot about what I already know. I've always been wondering, how does that work? Because how does search do that? And Petri has answered, I think it was Petri who answered that, which is, yeah, there's pre-trained models. Or maybe you both answered that. I found a different answer, or I found a definitive answer, though, for where can I buy nuts? They're on my local farmer's market. So, or in my kitchen. Thank you. And again, please be available, be stalked in order to ask more questions. You can find stuff in the community Slack. There's another ticket there. The ticket number might be the same as in the agenda. I'm not 100% sure. Yes, so you have shared that already during the presentation. Thank you very much. So there's a lot to learn. And there's one more session before we go into the next break. Mateus and Guillermo, would you come to the stage, please? And Tibor and Petri, thank you so much for
Thank you, guys.
more search
Thank you,
information.
guys.
Thank you.
I'll definitely find you and come back for more details.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And I see them on stage. And it must be Brazilian speakers because I see the Brazilian flag in the audience already again.
Oh yeah, let's do this, guys. Let's do this, Brazil. Let me put on the flags and the love.
You cannot deny where you're from. Is that both of you or only one of you?
Both.
Both. Good. So it's good that we only see Brazilian flags and hearts. Well, that's fair. That's just good. Okay. Welcome, both of you, Mateus and Guillermo. And whoops, let me sort everything out here. Okay, we are at quite famous on and well covered topic today. We're back at Liferay objects.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and be very curious to learn more about it. I have had my first productive use of Liferay objects, other than just a quick demo with actually this conference, because we are using objects for the registration and have an action on that to automatically provision the work adventure accounts. That is all behind that. And that's a classic action. And your topic is to come up with a custom action type. And I'll be very curious to learn what that is and what that can do for me. You both, I don't know, wait a second. Yes, this is both your, no, not both your first time at Dev24, but Mateus seems to be a little bit longer at Liferay, so since 2020. Does that mean that this is your third Dev24?
Yeah, not yet. I have participated of 2 of them. This is my first presentation.
Okay. And Guillermo has been, well, this is the first time doing the presentation at Dev24. How long are you at Liferay? I know you have a lot of industry experience, but...
I'm joined Liferay almost 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. So maybe this is also not your first Dev24, but the first presentation here.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So nothing much more, or not much more to say for me. You are presenting about custom action types, creating a custom action type for objects. Take it away.
Okay, thanks, Olaf. Okay, we are going to present the feature and also create a simple action type just to show the steps to make it work. So first I will create in a module. So putting this on our CGI model in the portal so we can see this action working. And then Mateus is going to show in the simulating the LXC environment in like a client extension way. So you can see the both ways to do that. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, I'm going to create an object to show the actions feature for the one who doesn't know about it, just a quick overview. So I'm going to create a person object. Okay, I'm going to create just two fields. The first one is name, text, and also an age, the integer. So here we have the actions tab that you can create your action for this object. I'm going to show here the basics. So since we developed objects, we start with these three types of triggers. That's on after add, on after delete, and on after update. And here we have these 5 today. Actually 4 of them because I'm on master, I'm more fresh, but the update is delivering soon. I think the next release. So the last year we just had the webhook way to do that. So throughout this year we developed the add another object entry or use Groove scripted, not some kind of notification by email. And this one we just developed the update another object entry and so on. So I'm going to create a let me see my time. Okay, I'm going to create that a custom one. First, I would like to show how this works. So I did a small figure here. So we have the object entry model listener. That's the listener that listen the changes over the model object entry. So we have on after create, remove, and update. That's they are our triggers. So once let's say some entry is added, it's called the object action engine. That's the one that's gonna execute the action. You start this process. So based on the type, like I showed, for example, here we have 5 types. These 5 types. So it's going to fetch the object action executed by the type. Then when it returns, they will actually execute the action. Now, as I explained, we have some of them. So added the object entry, object execution execute import, the webhook type, and you can also create your own custom object action executor. So let's go to create a new one for these actions. Okay, let's go. So here I have a project, a workspace here. I'm going to create a new module. Okay, let me call it object action reaction custom type. The type is going to be service. So Liferay action point example is going to be the package. The class name is going to be custom action type. That's going to implement the object action executor. Okay, it created my custom mod OCI model here. So I have my class custom action type that implements the object action executor. That's the guy. Let me clean this. Okay, so now I have my action custom type here implements our interface, and I'm going to implement the methods. So just two simple methods. The first one, the key. I'm going to call it custom action update person object. Okay, and here we write our own custom logic to do that. So I'm already have some code here. So we are going to, I created a person object, just a simple object with name and age. And to demonstrate that, we are going to call this API, that's a simple API, just predict the age by name, just to show that we can call another service to make some calculation or some integration and so on. So if you pass some name for here, let me put my name here, and they guess like the age. So we are going to use this in our custom logic to submit the person object, just putting the name, and they will fill the age field. Okay. Let me publish my object. Title field, name, publish. Let's go to my code. Okay, here. Let me take my code. Okay. I'm going to copy all the code here, and I will explain the code. Oops. Sorry, a lot of IntelliJ here. Okay, here we go. Okay, I reference the HTTP and the JSON factory to work with the requests and the JSON objects. So here I have the execute, as I said. We have company ID, some properties here, the payload, and the user ID. So here I'm taking the object entry from payload, that's a hash map, and then I get the object entry ID, that's the ID related to the entry. Inside the object entry, I also have the custom fields values. That's I want to take the naming one. So I have this here. And then I have a private method here. Just call the API I mentioned before. So I create a payload here, put the name that I had, and then I call the API, passing the name, invoke the URL, and then I get the return in a JSON. Based on this JSON, I can get the age that they predict. So I pass to another private method. That's the one that's gonna update the object entry. On this example, I could call the services. So the object entry services, those services that are available in Liferay. But here I put calling the object API because I can use the same, like almost the same code in the client extension LXC. So we can have the same view of the code. So here I'm create a payload for passing the age. I'm going to do a put or patch here. And I fill the header, the body, the authorization here, test library, the basic one. And then I'm calling my portal is running locally. So now I have a new object, so it's person, passing the object ID, and then I will do the patch over there. I had to use the transaction commit callback here because I'm adding the object, and once I'm using the REST API, they didn't finish the transaction yet, so they didn't create the entry. So I had to use this trick here to execute after the transaction. So I have the entry there, and then I invoke. Okay. Let me build it here. Custom project. The name. Okay. I'm building it. I have my own instance of library running here. Oh, some ports here. Let me see. Okay. So my model started here con Liferay actual example. If I go back to portal and then go to actions in the person object that I just created, I can call it update predict age. It's going to trigger on after I add an entry, and then I have my custom object here. We don't have the beautiful label here. I have to work on this, but at least it's like a admin configuration user. We will work on that. But okay, we have the custom action here. I will use this one and then save it. So I have my action, custom action, predict age, relate to this object. Let's see, it's working. Okay, so I'm going to put my name here. And that's it. It predicts 42 years. So let's try for other guys. Gabriel is old. And then Mateus. So that's the action working, the custom one. I just create just some OSI model. I have the method that you should implement your logic, and that's it. So it's very powerful because you can do a lot of things in your own logic. Of course, in objects, we are improving a lot of the out of the box features, like let's say if you want to make some calculation, some fields. Today you can do with some action, but we are going to deliver formula fields. And as I mentioned before, we didn't have the update entry action. Now we are going to deliver in the next release. So while we don't have the things that you want to use, you can customize it in Portal. I think that's it. Gabriel, Matheus is going to show in a client extension way on LXC now how to do that, and then we can answer some questions.
All right. So my time. Let's. So yeah. Just updating. Let's sign in. As Camacho said before, we have the same process to the LXC way. We have only to implement a method on our IntelliJ code. But first of all, we need to come up with the environment. This is I won't give you a spoiler, but you have a presentation with Gabriel and Felipe Marinho after, and they will show how you can bring up the environment to the LXC. The unique difference between my environment and of them is because I have to create a partial for the actions, and it is already has already a framework for this. Let's say, not a framework, but there's a start point. So was easier for me, and I will just show rapidly how I did it. We had to download Liferay CLI, and then we start our extension that we had created, and then you can create a partial. It's really simple because the CLI already had the process. So extensions create, and then we apply a partial. During the process, there are a lot of options that you can choose, and at the end, the process is a magician trick mount for you all the environment, and you already have a class. In this case, my object action class, which is the class one I will be implementing the action, my custom action, object action in this case. So yeah, we receive here a JSON in a string form, and a JWT, which is a JSON web token, one which we need them to get all the data we need to make to personalize the action. Why we need it? Because we have to access by REST API and do the modifications that we want to modify the object. I'll show the portal. Yeah, just like Guilherme Camacho said to you, I already created an object here called employees. Could be another name you can custom by yourself, and you just remember to personalize here at the environment the client extension YAML, remembering that I'm using Spring Boot here, and you had to name it here on scopes the object that you are customizing by the action, so that will work. And let's show you first this working. So I will create an entry for this object, and I'll put my name at first. And you see that the age here will be guessed in this case will be 0 because it doesn't update the page. But if I click cancel, you'll see that my age is here on the table. And here at the console, I can explain to you how it works. But first, let's start by the code. Here at my class, which is the one I had to customize, first there's the JWT string, which in this JWT you had the ID, subject, and claims. Those are things that we are using to personalize, to get the permission to modify the object and add an entry or update or everything that you want to do with the object. The object mapper, we can get a JSON by the object mapper. You can get this JSON node, which is where you have all the information about the object and the action. So here at the console, it's 2.0. All right. All this string here, we have all the data that we need to access and modify the object. So we had object definition ID, we had object entry ID. Let's see if I saw it here. Object external reference code, user ID. Let's see now the guess code. Object entry ID. So yeah, we had. It's not the same because it's this an old doc, but it's the same style. With the object entry ID, which we already printed here, and the name of that we had put on the employee name. All right, we can access another API, the same API that Camacho had used before, and we will make a call. Just to you to see, here is how I can access all the data inside that JSON that I show you. So here I am taking the object entry ID, and here below the name, the two information that I need to call the another API to guess the age of this employee. All right, so I had printed for you here, object ID and the name. After that, I need to guess the age. So how I did it. Here's the method who will return for us the age of the employee. So first of all, I had to create the headers, set the configurations to make the call to the API. Here I have the URL and the complement. I need to specify the name of the employee and the method get pass the body here and the type of the object. All right. So after that, I with the request from this result here from the REST template, I was using REST template here. I had a result, and the body of this result is where the age is. So the same way that you saw when Camacho showed to you before, will be showed here the same way. But I only want this age 33. All right. So I get the age and return it, doing the same process that I did before for getting the name and the object entry ID. It's just like XPath. It's kind of similar. You are iterating by the object JSON object to get all the data you want. After that, I returned the age, which is this method here. I'm putting here, and then I use the update object entry method, passing the object entry ID, the age that is need to be updated, and the JWT you need to get the access to the object REST API. All right, after that, it's just like Camacho did before, and I did it too. The difference bit is here I'm doing a put method. The method here is a put because I'm updating the object. So I just set the URL, the headers to, then I complete with the rest of the URL to make the right update. Authorization, the JWT token, which is the lord of the access here, and the body of the update. I mean, here we can pass the age, the new age, in fact, and then you can call the the REST API. It's only this, and after that you can see that the age will be changed. I mean, we guess the age with the first method, get age by name. Then we can make the update by making put, using a put to change the age of the employee. And it's simple like this. In this case, you can personalize as you want, because I'm doing this only with the entry, but you with the REST API in the right access, permission access, you can do a lot of things with objects, just like Camacho said. You can calculate some fields, you can add another object, you can add another entry, you can delete an entry if you want, and we had a lot of them coming soon, right? So yes, just like this. I mean, we can test it again. Another name. Yeah, this time is updated. All right. Yeah. Olaf. 52. Yeah, I don't know the age of Olaf, but I'm sure there is less than 52. And that's just how object actions works. And it's really simple. About the environment, who I had to bring up, Felipe and Gabriel showed you before, after us.
Well, thank you very much. Let's see the Brazilian flags flying in the audience again. That was impressive. There's this the one aspect to extend the low code environment with code, but that's in order to extend it with more low code, so to say, to bring in more actions into the object world.
Yeah.
Okay, there's one curious comment by a certain person with a dog on his arm that says, "Try more name age guesses." But I guess we don't need to do that, or should we?
Yeah,
They tried Olaf and they got 52. Is that correct answer?
That is not the correct answer.
Damn.
that's right. Which is the name? I didn't get it.
Try Anne, maybe. Let's see.
Where are we?
65.
She's the older.
Whoa. Okay. Try Olaf again. What was that? 52. You said
52 before, yeah.
I'm sorry. Olaf. Yeah, 52.
Yeah. Well, it's close. Close enough. But it's not exact.
Right.
Good. We can test a couple more people from the audience, or we can check if there are more questions.
I don't see any question, but I have one about you demonstrated extending action type within Liferay and then using client extension. So the last example, it's actually adding an an action type in Liferay, or is it working a bit different? I might have missed that.
No, yeah, I'm adding an extension client, and I'm trying to from them I create a partial, and then I can personalize.
Okay, so but my question would be like, because of the, I would say, type or definition you have of your client extensions, is it listed somewhere within the control panel as, yeah, I detected the client extension and it's a specific new type that you can choose, you know, like you did when you deployed in Liferay? I'm not sure if it's clear.
Yep. The other question is about the client extension, right?
Yeah, how Liferay, you know, detect that this is a new action type kind
We
of
have
extension.
I think let me see here. We have a class. Let me share here. Just quick. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
We have the implementation here, add, groovy, notification, and I don't know if it was Ray. Ray implemented this one that's called function object action executor.
Mhm.
That they do this bridge between the client extensions and this featuring in object action. So
Okay.
I don't know deeply the code here, but they did this logic here. You can check after this class. So they create like a new types of action when you create the client extension there.
So that's because when you see the code, you can actually see all the implementation that you listed as action types for an object, but I'm not remembering that we have functions. So it's kind of an hidden one that would be trigger if you have extensions deployed, right?
Yeah, it's not showed there, but it does the magic here.
Okay.
Let's say that that way.
Okay. So if you're like adding a new client extension like the one you did, it will trigger for every object?
Yeah, so you will have the client extension available here, so you can configure it for any object that you want, like as a normal action. So let's say object B actions, you can create a new one, and it's going to show here in the list. So it will be always available here.
But as a client extension, it's not listed here?
It is not the function one that you said, the class is not listed here, but as you create a client extension for action, each one that you create is going to appear here.
Okay, I see.
If you have like 2, 3, yeah.
Okay, just to be sure, like the YAML configuration is what makes the link between your objects and the action, right?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you. I think I have all my answers. It's clear for me.
Okay, and also no more questions from my end. But that was all interesting. I gotta put that into action. That is precisely like this is precisely the reason why we have Dev.24, because I would have never gotten the idea that this is number 1 possible, number 2 useful, and number 3 easy. So from now on, I have the reference to go back, and anybody else in the audience as well. Reminder, this all is recorded, so we'll it's already on YouTube, but we will provide you with chapter marks in a bit. But bear with us, because this is a community-led event, so we will need to catch up on our work that we had fallen off the table during the last week or weeks. And sooner or later, we will have all of the videos tagged and linked from the agenda with the material. And we'll definitely hunt you down for getting a link to your material as well. Thank you very much for your availability, your willingness to share, and all of the information.
Thank you all.
Flags in the
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
We are going into our last networking break. That means you have the chance to run around, meet people, and have whatever the appropriate drink of the day is for wherever you are. So go ahead and get some coffee or anything else, tea, whatever you fancy. Louis, do you have anything that we should give them for the next break?
No, just maybe a reminder of the duration of the break.
That is a
which
good idea.
Should be 1 hour and 10 minutes.
1 hour, 10 minutes, which means we'll continue at 7:30 UTC. You do the math for your local time zone. Okay, with that, let's stop the streaming and see you again at in 70 minutes.
Yep.
And the stream has